from Washington, D.C.
From Bloomberg's Washington, D.C. studios to our TV and radio audiences worldwide, welcome to Balance of Power. I'm Joe Matthew. Tonight, one step closer to the release of the Epstein Files.
We fought the president, the attorney general, the FBI director, the Speaker of the House, and the vice president to get this win.
These women have fought the most horrific fight that no woman should have to fight, and they did it by banding together and never giving up.
It is the Republicans who are acting in good faith, and I believe the American people are going to see that and understand it.
The House of Representatives tonight overwhelmingly voting in favor of a discharge petition that starts the process of releasing the Jeffrey Epstein files to the public. The steps ahead and how Washington is reacting tonight when Democratic Caucus Chair Congressman Pete Aguilar and Republican Congressman Bill Huizenga join us. Plus, the president rolls out the red carpet for Saudi Crown Prince.
We're going to have a deal. They're going to purchase F-35s. They're buying them from Lockheed, and it's a great plane.
The meeting between the two leaders as MBS pays his first visit to the White House since 2018. The news we're getting now on a security deal between the two countries and more up ahead. Also tonight, federal judges issue a ruling on Texas redistricting, blocking the state from using its redrawn maps. We'll dive into the story and what, if any, impact the decision will have on other states looking to do the same. And the U.S. planning to approve the first sales of advanced AI chips to Saudi Arabia. We'll get into the implications with Bloomberg's Mike Shepard up ahead. But we begin tonight with the big news here in Washington. The House of Representatives a short time ago overwhelmingly voting in favor of the Epstein discharge petition that would start the process of releasing the investigative files. The vote today coming just days after the president reversed course on this, telling House Republicans to vote in favor of the release. Now we're learning that the Senate could take up this bill and pass it as soon as today. According to Majority Leader John Thune, it's a fast-moving story tonight that we're covering from both sides of Pennsylvania Avenue with Bloomberg's Erik Wasson on Capitol Hill and Kate Sullivan from the White House North Lawn covering that story and the visit from the Saudi Crown Prince today. But we begin with Erik Wasson on the Hill. Erik, all members of the House but one voted in favor of this petition. What does that tell us about what comes next?
It really looks like it's going to be steamrolled through the Senate. Speaker Mike Johnson said he expected the Senate to amend it to sort of create loopholes for Attorney General Mamdani to redact a lot of this material, in the Speaker's words, to protect victims and whistleblowers and sources and methods. But we went over to ask John Thune immediately after the House passed this 427-1. He said that with that overwhelming vote, he doesn't see the appetite to amend it, and he thinks it could pass the Senate by unanimous consent. They're running what's called a hotline. If nobody objects, we could see this clear the Senate and be sent to President Trump's desk before midnight.
So with the chances that this could pass before midnight, Erik, what do we expect in terms of a timeline for when we could see this bill, get to President Trump's desk and those documents actually become public?
Well, one of the complicating factors is that the Attorney General has announced an investigation into a lot of Trump's political opponents and adversaries like Bill Clinton and their connections to the Epstein matter. And the Attorney General would be able, under the terms of this bill, to not release certain materials claiming an ongoing investigation. So Trump has said he will sign the bill. It could be signed very quickly, but then we could see that there would be a long delay, perhaps, in whether some of the Epstein files are actually released and the victims get the gratification that they're seeking.
Bloomberg's Erik Wasson reporting live from Capitol Hill on an important day here in Washington. Erik, thank you. Now, as Congress voted on the Epstein discharge petition, the president was busy hosting Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. MBS in the White House as the two leaders finalized talks around a security deal and chip sale. Here was the president remarking on the expected financial investment in the U.S. by the Crown Prince when both met before cameras in the Oval Office.
$21 trillion will be the amount invested in the United States or committed to invest in 1 year. So I'm here 9 months. We're up to almost $18 trillion. Let's
go to Bloomberg's Kate Sullivan at the White House right now as the administration keeps an eye on the vote while hosting Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Kate, I have to ask you quickly before you bring us in on this important visit. from the Crown Prince. Is the president prepared to sign this discharge petition to release the Epstein files as soon as tonight?
You know, he actually addressed this yesterday. He was asked whether he would sign it, and his message right now, after, you know, the abrupt reversal on this, is that, you know, House Republicans should vote for this, that he is all for this. He's just made it very clear that he wants people to stop talking about it. He said that very explicitly yesterday in the Oval Office, saying that people should see it, anyone should see it, but he wants people to stop talking about it. He thinks it's taking away from his agenda. There's been a lot of oxygen, and the storyline really isn't going anywhere anytime soon, and he recognizes that.
Kate, in the Oval Office earlier today, we saw Trump and the Crown Prince bin Salman talk about investments of up to $1 trillion in the U.S. But we also saw Trump essentially absolve the Crown Prince of any involvement in the death of journalist Jamal Khashoggi several years ago. What does that suggest about the nature of the relationship that Trump is looking for with Saudi Arabia?
It's a great question. We saw a really quite stunning scene unfold today in the Oval Office. You know, Trump berated and attacked an ABC reporter who asked the Crown Prince directly about U.S. intelligence reports that found that he ordered the killing of Jamal Khashoggi, who was killed and dismembered in a Saudi consulate in 2018. Trump very quickly rushed to his defense. You know, he attacked the reporter. He said, the quote was, "Things happened, but he knew nothing about it." You know, he very forcefully dismissed this question. And he also said of Khashoggi, you know, a lot of people didn't like that gentleman. He also suggested that ABC could lose its broadcasting license. So it was a very stunning scene to unfold. You know, the Crown Prince has really, you know, been, after the killing of Khashoggi, was a pariah on the world stage. Trump has made very clear that he, you know, is taking a very different approach. He considers the Crown Prince a very close ally and friend of his. We saw him really roll out the red carpet here at the White House. It's just a very abrupt turnaround from just a few years ago. It really was not that long ago when Khashoggi was killed in 2018. And he received a very different reception on the world stage at the time.
That's for sure. It was remarkable watching that unfold in the Oval today. Kate Sullivan, thank you so much for the report. In the Oval Office today with the Saudi Crown Prince, the president was asked if he could confirm America's prized F-35 fighter jets are in fact being sold to Saudi Arabia as part of a security deal. They certainly did a flyby over the White House before they met. Take a listen to what he said.
We're going to have a deal. They're going to purchase F-35s. They're buying them from Lockheed, and it's a great plane. We make, by the way, the best military equipment. You saw that during the Iran little skirmish. We make the best planes, the best missiles. We make the best offensive missiles. We make the best military equipment in the world.
For more on the president's visit with Saudi's MBS today, we bring in the voice of Dana Stroul, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for the Middle East in the Biden administration. She's also the research director at the Washington Institute for Near East Policy. It's great to have you with us here in Washington today. Let's start with the jets. By the way, that's a story that we broke here on Bloomberg yesterday, so we knew this was coming. We saw Lockheed shares respond. This is going to upend quite a bit of convention in the Middle East. I'm not sure what Israel thinks about having the same firepower as Saudi Arabia, but should we assume that Congress is okay with this and that this deal is done?
I don't think we should assume that. This was an announcement of an intent to sell. And when you think about the last time the United States said it was going to sell F-35s to an Arab military, it was the United Arab Emirates. It was before the Abraham Accords. And the sale of those F-35s was linked to normalizing ties with Israel. Of course, the UAE did normalize ties with Israel, and then it didn't get those F-35s. In this case, Trump is delinking the sale of F-35s from normalizing ties with Israel. And of course, there's this U.S. commitment to uphold Israel's military edge in the region. And we just saw that at play in the 12-day war with Iran. And so how Trump balances his commitment to Israel's military edge while selling those F-35s remains to be seen.
The other big part of this deal had to do with AI and then chip sales in particular, both of the U.S. getting investment and also some advanced chips going to Saudi Arabia. What does this enable in terms of both countries being able to boost their AI power?
It's really significant. So what's very clear is that Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and his Vision 2030, which is really extraordinary vision for broad economic and social change in the Saudi Arabia, believes that he needs to be an AI leader. And to do that, he wants to partner with the United States. The United States look at Saudi Arabia, land space area for data centers, for energy production, for what we need for the future of AI. And as they are leaning towards each other to set the standards for the next phase of this emerging technology landscape.
If China can't get Blackwell chips, why should Saudi Arabia?
This is a big question. What we know is that President Trump is very keen on getting these chips to his Gulf partners. He made an announcement about doing this for the UAE during his presidential trip, and now Saudi Arabia. So he is leaning in and saying, these are trusted partners, and we are going to cooperate with them. They want to be leaders in AI. They want to be leaders with chips and semiconductors. We would prefer that they work with us rather than China, and I think that's the gamble that Trump and his team are taking.
Both on F-35s and with the chips, as you mentioned, there are export controls because of these security concerns that have been longstanding. Are there risks here that outweigh the benefits of these deals?
I think there are always risks, and that is part of what we are doing inside Washington and the U.S. government right now is thinking through the risk tolerance of how you work with partners, how you have a discussion about creating a trusted technology ecosystem so that we can have confidence that our cutting-edge technology is protected with these partners. And that's the discussion we're having right now. It's why it took so long to get to those chips for the UAE and why these negotiations have been so extensive with Saudi Arabia.
We heard a lot about military hardware today, economic cooperation. We didn't hear a lot about human rights, although a couple of reporters attempted to bring this up. One of them, Mary Bruce at ABC News, was called by the president to be a terrible person, an insubordinate, and a terrible journalist for asking about the likes of Jamal Khashoggi. What did you make of the president's response, saying that he was disliked by a lot of people?
I think, first of all, Trump said a lot of things today in the Oval Office. A lot of that suggests that he didn't quite read the declassified CIA report. I think two things can be true at the same time. On the one hand, it was a heinous, atrocious, despicable act, the murder of a Washington Post journalist. And what we know is that the leadership of Saudi Arabia and Mohammed bin Salman has apologized for it, attempted to change approach, and put new measures in place inside the kingdom. And at the same time, there has been a shift in thinking here in Washington that despite concerns about human rights and despite these things, we still need to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time, and that for our economic security and our national security, it is better off figuring out how to work forward in a strong partnership with Saudi Arabia.
We saw that shift in thinking really on display. You know, we went from a fist bump under Biden to a, really full-throated embrace here. What do you anticipate, of the relationship that Trump has started to lay out here? What will just last through the Trump years, and what could conceivably extend further?
First of all, today is another step in continuity. So from the first Trump administration, think about President Biden in the campaign calling Mohammed bin Salman a pariah, to only 18 months later going, of course, there was the fist bump, but there was a sweeping communique that he signed that laid out an expansive vision for a big, broad partnership with Saudi Arabia. So both Biden and now Trump have reached the same conclusion, which is that we want to have this partnership. What remains to be determined, I think, is the F-35s aren't going to be delivered in 3 years of President Trump's administration. Executive orders can be changed in future administrations. And so both of them will have to demonstrate the value added to both peoples and both countries of the enhanced agreements we're seeing signed today and tomorrow.
We've already referenced U.S. policy toward Israel that helps Israel maintain an edge when it comes to the military hardware that we're providing over all other nations in the Middle East. It appears that policy is changing. And following the conversation that was had in the Oval Office today, when you consider the idea of normalizing relations between Saudi Arabia and Israel, what's Benjamin Netanyahu thinking tonight?
I think he's nervous. This is a case where President Trump is more aligned with the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia than he is with Netanyahu. We heard MBS say today, I do want to be in the Abraham Accords, but I also want a path to Palestinian statehood. And this is exactly what Israel and Netanyahu's governing coalition appear to be opposed to. It was in that Security Council resolution that was opposed or was passed just the other day. And so there's a possibility of some real tension between the United States and Israel going forward.
China, of course, was not involved in today's meeting or talks, but the specter of China really looms large over all of these deals. How much, did Trump's meeting just a couple weeks in Asia matter and influence the decisions and announcements we saw today?
I think China, you're right, was overlaying everything. And what is clear is that in an increasingly competitive global system, what Washington wants is Saudi Arabia and its partners in the Middle East on its side. Trump did talk about in the Oval Office the ways in which he's working towards success in managing the relationship with China. But of course, the more the United States throws down and makes a global integrated trade and these sorts of issues or tariffs on our partners difficult, we're going to push our partners towards China. And so this is a balancing act. And whether or not Trump is taking guidance from his team, I think remains to be seen.
Dana, thank you. Dana Stroul, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for the Middle East in the Biden administration. It's good to have you with us on Balance of Power. Coming up, we'll turn our attention to Capitol Hill following today's Epstein vote in the House, when we speak with Democratic Congressman Pete Aguilar, California. We'll also ask him about the breaking news out of Texas, with the court striking down the state's new congressional maps. It's all next on Balance of Power on Bloomberg TV and radio.
On this vote, the yeas are 427, the nays are 1. 2/3 being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended, the bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table.
With a round of applause, this is Balance of Power on Bloomberg TV and radio. Alongside Laura Davison, I'm Joe Matthew in Washington. Sound there of the Epstein Files discharge petition being passed by the House of Representatives today. Mike Flood presiding after months of disagreement between lawmakers. Many thought this day would never come. And the shift to voting for the bill coming only after President Trump urged lawmakers to vote in favor, while still just earlier today calling the release of the files a, quote, Democratic hoax. Joining us now with his reaction, live from Capitol Hill, Democratic Congressman Pete Aguilar of California, who is chair of the House Democratic Caucus. Mr. Chairman, welcome back to Bloomberg TV and radio. I'm not even sure what to ask you other than what was the conversation, the vibe in the well of the House in that chamber this afternoon when this passed with all but one member?
Well, I think it's a credit to the sponsors of this measure, too. I mean, Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna did an amazing job continuing to see this through. And for us, what this means is, this is an opportunity for justice to be served. Now, if the president was serious about this, he could release these files tomorrow. He could release them all. He could direct his Department of Justice to respond to the lawful subpoena that was also sent their way by Democrats and Republicans to submit the material to the Oversight and Government Reform Committee. So the president, if he wanted to make this happen, if he truly wanted these documents public and justice done, so these survivors, some of which were in the Capitol today, if he really wanted justice for the survivors, he could release these documents on his own.
Republicans really had a very quick change in messaging just that unfolded over the past 48 hours or so. Were you surprised to see essentially all of your colleagues on the Republican side join you? Only one Republican voted no on this bill.
Well, I wish they would have had that same feeling, a couple weeks ago. We wouldn't have had to wait this long for justice to be done if a couple more Republicans would have signed the discharge petition. But I think this shows that, Donald Trump allowed them. He said he was in a losing position. He knew he was in a losing position. He knew this was going to happen. And so he basically directed all of them, all of our colleagues on the Republican side, to vote for this measure. And so that's the power of Donald Trump as well. He has said himself he's the president and the speaker. He proved it today with that vote.
Wow, boy, it's really something then. With the exception of Clay Higgins, the Republican from Louisiana who voted no today, the former Cajun John Wayne, as they called him when he was a sheriff. I'm assuming that was a loyalty play to Donald Trump. Maybe you're hearing otherwise, Congressman. To have one lawmaker in the entire House stand alone is pretty fascinating. But I'm just curious, Tom Massie caucusing with Democrats now? Is Marjorie Taylor Greene going to cross the aisle and join you here at some point?
I don't think so. Look, if our colleagues want to work in a bipartisan way, whether it's to fund government or to fund health care, we're willing to have conversations with them. And that's always been the case. Last time I was here, we said, during the government shutdown, Democrats will go, anywhere to have conversations with the president about how we get out of this situation. And so that continues to be the case. We'll have discussions and debate and at any point on any topic if it delivers hope for the American people and if it's specifically tied to health care and the affordability crisis that we're in. Democrats are more than willing to have conversations with Thomas Massie or Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Congressman, another big development today was the Texas redistricting plan getting struck down by a judge. Your state of California has, in response to Texas, has started its own redistricting process. Your Governor Gavin Newsom said this was in part to sort of act as a counterweight to Texas. Should California continue with its redistricting plan if Texas is stalled?
Well, we aren't just continuing with our plan. Right now, we're actually defending our plan in the courts from Donald Trump's Department of Justice. But more importantly, the people of California have spoken. Millions of Californians showed up. They saw the map. Unlike Texas, we put our map in front of the voters. We put the map in front of the voters and said, do you want to push back? Do you want us to have a voice? Texas is playing politics here, and should we have that opportunity to push back against not just Texas, but Missouri and Ohio and North Carolina, all who have done redistricting, and now Florida that is waiting to do redistricting on their own. And overwhelmingly, over 64% of Californians said yes. And so very different than Texas, which, by the way, we should also note the judge that wrote the opinion is a Trump appointee. So the Trump appointee judge said this wasn't about politics. This was a racial gerrymander in violation of the federal law. Where in California now you have, we put the maps before the voters, and a couple weeks ago the voters resoundingly said, yes, we want to push back, we want to fight, we want to make sure that we protect our democracy from Donald Trump trying to rig this election before we even get to 2026.
Congressman, we've got breaking news. This red headline just crossed the Bloomberg terminal while you were speaking. To pull you back into the Epstein situation, the Senate has just reached a deal to clear the House-passed bill. This is apparently on the fast track now, and that bill is going to be delivered next door. So let's get real in our remaining 90 seconds. We know that President Trump has said he's going to sign that bill. We also know he's assigned his Department of Justice to investigate Democrats, including Bill Clinton. Once Congress is finished with this and the president signs it, will we be told that the Department of Justice cannot release the files because it's an ongoing investigation?
Joe, that's a great question, and that is absolutely the question we should be asking Donald Trump. I don't think it's a coincidence that he directed his attorney general to open up these investigations, knowing that there is that clause in the bill that says if it's an active investigation, it could prevent the administration from releasing these records. We should demand that these records be released. And we all know that it isn't just about some Democrats who are listed in here. We know that the president's name himself in the email trove that was just released is mentioned 1,500 times, the name Donald Trump. So this should be about disclosing to the American people what's there, not protecting anybody, whether they're Democrat or Republican or the president of the United States.
Joining us at a remarkable moment in American politics, Democratic Congressman Pete Aguilar of California. He's chair of the House Democratic Caucus. We thank you, sir, for the insights this evening. Coming up, we turn our attention across the aisle when Republican Congressman Bill Huizenga joins us to continue to follow this breaking news. The Senate now reaching a deal to clear the House-passed Epstein Files Bill. This is happening in real time, so stay with us on Balance of Power on Bloomberg TV and radio. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg TV and radio. Alongside Laura Davison, I'm Joe Matthew in Washington with breaking news. If you're just joining us, not only has the discharge petition aimed at releasing the Epstein files passed the House in a 427-1 margin, But the United States Senate has already agreed unanimously, and this announcement has just come with a red headline on the terminal, to pass that bill, to clear that bill as it is written as soon as it arrives in the Senate. It will then be sent to President Trump for his signature. This effectively checks both boxes on Capitol Hill, having seen that overwhelming victory to pass the discharge petition in the House, knowing it will go next door to the Senate and be passed immediately upon arrival. We don't have an exact timeline on the transfer of that legislation, but it's something that we'll be watching closely with this unfolding just as we came to air this evening. For more, we turn to Capitol Hill, where Republican Congressman Bill Huizenga of Michigan joins us live. He's the vice chair of the House Financial Services Committee and a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Congressman, I never thought we'd be talking about this, but here we are. The Senate apparently will pass this bill, will clear it in exactly the same form that you passed it today in the House. Knowing the president will sign the bill, do you believe these files will in fact be released?
Well, I think they will, and there's been proper redactions and protection of state secrets and some of the classified material that may or may not be in there. So it's the right thing to do. This has been a bad, long journey. I mean, it's interesting. The Democrats had 4 years to do something about this and didn't, but just spent the last 6 months trying to turn this into a political football. But so hopefully this gets us beyond that. Glad to hear the Senate is going to be moving on this as well. And there are some people that have some concerns about protections of victims and people that have not been named publicly yet as victims, having some concerns with that. But I think the balance of this is positive.
Earlier today, when Mike Johnson was talking about this bill, he repeatedly said that it would be amended when it goes to the Senate to make it more favorable for the administration to be able to pull back some documents that it doesn't want to release. Now that this bill has gone to the Senate, is set to pass without any of those revisions, do you have buyer's remorse for voting for this bill?
No. Actually, I said long ago, well before this was really the political football it became, that I believed it was the right thing to do to properly release those files and the information. So that's the Senate's prerogative. That I think anybody who was taking that vote today understood that that might be a possibility, and I'm comfortable with that.
What did you make of your colleague Clay Higgins of Louisiana voting against that bill today, Congressman? I only asked because it was a single no vote, and he said on social media that it was a principled vote with those redactions and the protections of victims in mind. Why did he have to vote no on that? He clearly is not comfortable with the way these files are being handled, or was this about something else?
Yeah, I'm not aware. I didn't have a chance to talk to Clay. Look, we all as individual members need to justify our votes, whether it's near unanimity like this. I mean, 427 votes for something. I'm not sure that we could get Congress to vote and agree that today is Tuesday with 427 votes. So it's a bit of an outlier. That was his prerogative to do. But I believe the vast majority of my colleagues are very comfortable with the situation, getting those files released.
Your colleague Marjorie Taylor Greene from Georgia earlier today said that this Epstein issue is causing a rift within the Republican Party, specifically within MAGA. Do you agree with her that this is going to be an issue that will dog Republicans, particularly the conservative wing, for months to come?
Well, as a conservative, I haven't seen that rift quite the way that she has, or quite the way that she maybe has created. And look, I think if there was truly a rift, it would not be 427 votes with one outlier in favor of that. And so I think that this is a consensus. It's something that needed to be dealt with, and we moved ahead with it. To be honest, I'm a little surprised that the Senate is taking it up this quickly. That's a calculation and a decision that obviously Leader Thune had to make. I'm assuming he did that in consultation with the White House as well. But we're gonna, as I think Joe had said earlier, this is going to check the two boxes on Capitol Hill, and it's going to move forward and go to the president's desk, presumably when the Senate takes care of that tonight.
I'd like to ask you, Congressman, while you're with us, about what's happening today at the White House. Pretty important meeting between President Trump and the Saudi crown prince touting a massive multi-billion-dollar investment here in the U.S. And I know from your position on foreign affairs, you've got ideas on this. In exchange for this massive investment, we're selling F-35 fighter jets and apparently are going to be furnishing Saudi Arabia with high-end AI semiconductors. Is this a good deal in the name of our own national security?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to actually learning more about it. Let me first quickly address the F-35s and then move on to the chips, because that's actually something I've done a lot more work on in both Financial Services Committee as well as the Foreign Affairs Committee. The F-35s, that is certainly a shift in balance of power potentially within the Middle East. We have had a longstanding policy to make sure that Israel has the leading technology in the region. We do know that Saudi Arabia is an important ally in many ways to the United States. They've been a check on Iran. They've been a check on a number of other problematic players in the neighborhood, in a very, very rough neighborhood. Let's move on to the chips part, because I think that is something that is very, very significant. And is one of the reasons why I have a bill called the Chip Security Act that I have introduced. Look, the White House has produced their own white paper on what sort of limitations we should be having as a country in allowing trade with these upper-level, high-performing chips. Who receives those, under what circumstances, in what way can they use them? I would like to see clarity on that. We know that Saudi Arabia has been trying to diversify in many, many ways, but certainly its economy, this is one way of doing that. There's even discussion, I know, of potential civilian nuclear technology going to Saudi Arabia. That's been discussed as one of the ways to power some of those data centers and the AI revolution that is happening around the world. So looking forward to getting some more information on that. I personally have some cautionary hurdles that I would like to see cleared before I'm totally comfortable with just having a green light to the latest bleeding edge technology when it comes to chips and AI to even an ally like Saudi Arabia.
Congressman, Republicans got a little bit of a setback earlier today in the redistricting plan when the Texas map was struck down by a judge. Is this a mistake that Republicans made by leading off in Texas to try to rebalance the power of the House? And is this an own goal on Republicans' part?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the last part about that, but I know you were saying, was this a miscalculation? Look, I mean, the courts were doing this down in North Carolina over the last decade already. We've had a number of court cases that have reshuffled states around the country. In Michigan, we have not really seen that, partially because we too had a citizens initiative that put in a presumably nonpartisan redistricting commission. What I think was stunning is that California then threw out their nonpartisan redistricting commission to take a very partisan stance. There's no doubt that states have the ability to go and do this, in my view of the reading of the Constitution, where it says states will determine how those divisions within the assignment of the number of members of Congress will go. So it's within their power to do so. It just seems hypocritical in a state like California that had been trying to wring politics out of it to go back on that. But, look, those are decisions that each state legislature has. I was a state legislator, and I know that there's a lot that goes into the redistricting. Is this a strategic mistake of some sort? I don't know that it was specifically that. I don't know that we'll know whether there's a benefit or a negative to either side, really. The irony is that we might end up right about where we're at, just reshuffled in different states.
That may well be what this all comes to. Congressman, thank you for
welcome
joining
to Washington,
us again.
right?
Yeah, indeed. This is what we do here. Bill Huizenga, Republican from Michigan, thank you for coming back to see us on Bloomberg. During President Trump's meeting with the Saudi Crown Prince earlier today, President Trump talked about the prospect of what we were just discussing with Congressman Huizenga, selling AI chips to Saudi Arabia. Listen.
Mr. President, have you approved the export licenses for advanced chips to Saudi Arabia? The export licenses?
We are working on that. We're negotiating that right now. Marco, do you want to talk about that, or Scott?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's part of what we may have announcements on that later today. But that's what we've been working on is the mechanics by which something like that could be achieved. And it's part of the broader process, part of this broader engagement and cooperation between our two countries.
Certain levels of chips. Yeah.
Certain levels of chips, he said. Moments after that, Bloomberg News reporting the U.S. plans to approve the first sales of advanced AI chips to the Saudi Arabian firm Humane as part of a broader AI agreement between Washington and Riyadh. For more on this, we turn to Bloomberg's Michael Shepard with us here in our Washington bureau. Are these licenses as good as issued?
Not quite yet. It sounds like they are getting very close. It's unclear what hurdles remain. There are also other questions, too, Joe, about exactly what kinds of chips are we talking about? Would it be the very top of the line from NVIDIA or AMD right now? Or exactly, we don't know. We also don't know how many because, you know, the kingdom has big ambitions for building data centers and using them to power its own expansion into AI, and that will require a lot of chips. In the report that you were just referencing from this afternoon, Humane's CEO, Tarek Amin, had told us just a few weeks ago that they plan to buy as many as 400,000 AI chips through 2030. So they have big expansion plans. So it'll be interesting to see how many chips get approved. And of course, you know, as the congressman was alluding to, there are also security concerns surrounding this. And the question is, what would Humane or other Saudi ventures offer in the way of security commitments and guarantees? And the main issue is really not so much even regional security there. The concern is China. Would somehow the technology leak to China from Saudi Arabia or from the UAE, with whom the U.S. has also entered into chip agreements? So they have to find a way to guarantee that the technology stays where it's been sold. So it'll be interesting to see where that ends up, too.
Recognizing that we don't have a lot of the details on what kinds of chips here, what are the kinds of chips that Saudi Arabia wants, and why have they not been able to get their hands on them until this proposal now?
Well, the chips that they want and that everybody in the world wants are those market-leading Blackwell design chips from NVIDIA. And those are the ones that are powering the AI boom globally. And they are the ones that can perform the fastest and the most calculations in the least amount of time and using the least amount of energy compared to whatever else is out there from other global competitors. And those include from Huawei Technologies, which is emerging as a real challenger to NVIDIA and to AMD on the global stage when it comes to those AI chip sales. Huawei's chips aren't quite as fast, they're not quite as power efficient, but they are cheaper. And that is one advantage that they bring in markets around the world. And that is one reason why the U.S. is trying to ensure that there is some sort of a firewall between whatever American technology that gets sold, not just the chips, mind you, but also the F-35s that we've been talking about. They're essentially a flying computer. And if it gets anywhere near or connected to a Huawei-related network, the concern among U.S. officials is that there could be a leakage of technology. So they will really need to see some guarantees on that front. And Humane has promised to refrain from using Huawei technologies in its build-out.
Really interesting, Mike. Thank you so much for the insights. Bloomberg's Michael Shepard with some important reporting. We should note NVIDIA shares finished lower today, down almost 3%. AMD also lower. We saw stocks dropping across the AI space. AMD was down over 4%. Micro was down. Broadcom was down across the board, and all the Mag 7 shares finished lower as well. Something worth noting on a day like this. We'll have much more straight ahead as we look forward to our political panel on Balance of Power on Bloomberg TV and radio. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg TV and radio. Alongside Laura Davison, I'm Joe Matthew. Thanks for being with us. Some of the stories we're watching in today's Power Brief. Meta won a key lawsuit with the FTC today, with a federal judge ruling the company's acquisitions of Instagram and WhatsApp do not violate U.S. antitrust law. The decision is seen as a massive loss for the federal government, which sued the tech giant for antitrust violations in 2020. This case is one of 5 major antitrust lawsuits filed by the FTC against the world's largest technology platforms. 2 federal judges have already ruled that Google illegally monopolized online search and advertising markets, while the suits against Amazon and Apple, meantime, are pending. President Trump ordered a U.S. boycott of this weekend's G20 summit, the first of its kind to be held on the African continent, maintaining his false narrative that white Afrikaner farmers are being subjected to genocide in South Africa. In an interview during Bloomberg's Africa Business Summit in Johannesburg earlier today, South Africa's Foreign Minister Ronald Lamola described the U.S. administration's views as feeding the agenda of white supremacy. Here's what he said.
The DEI views of MAGA is an ideological question to feed the agenda of white supremacy. When you look at the program of Afrikaners that white South Africa, that for you to qualify to be a refugee, you have to, firstly, you must be white. Secondly, you must be an Afrikaner. It's a race-based policy.
Back in Washington now as we assemble our political panel on a truly remarkable day for Washington politics. We're joined by John Seaton, Republican strategist, founding partner, CEO of Echo Canyon Consulting, alongside Democratic strategist Megan Hayes, former special assistant to President Biden. It's great to have both of you with us. Megan, we've talked a lot about the Epstein files, and here we are on a day when it's passed overwhelmingly by the House. It might be going through the Senate right now, as we now do have a deal, if you're just joining us on Bloomberg, a deal in hand to clear the legislation with no amendments passed by the House. President says he's going to sign it. What am I missing?
I mean, I think it's an incredible reversal of the political climate. I also think that a lot of these members saw politically it'd be really bad for them to vote no on this. And I think Donald Trump saw that and saw the ground shifting underneath them. Ultimately, this is about the victims. It's about holding people accountable. So I'm glad that the House and the Senate finally have found their error of their ways in the past.
John, we saw a real reversal here, and we saw them really earlier this year on Epstein slow down. We saw Johnson keep the House members out of town in August. He didn't bring them back during the shutdown, partially because of this Epstein issue. Does it seem like that Trump at this point is wanting to get this done with, get it over with? We saw him just post on Truth Social just a couple minutes ago, I don't care when the Senate passes this House bill, whether tonight or at some time in the near future. I don't want Republicans to take their eyes off the victories and cites tax cuts, references his hottest country talk that he brings up all the time. What is Trump's state of mind here?
Right. Well, I think it's a good point, and I do think that Republican and Democratic members of Congress heard from their constituents loud and clear that they wanted these files released. And I'll tell you what, you couldn't go to a Republican county meeting or state party meeting over the last several years without hearing a very clear call to release these files. So I think Republican voters were very clear on this point. I think the president heard them. I think the House did the right thing today. It sounds like the Senate's going to do the same. And as my colleague pointed out here, it really is about the victims, and hopefully we can see some measure of justice to those who are hurt.
You know, there's still a lot of people who think these documents will never see the light of day because of an ongoing investigation into Democrats and their history with Epstein. We'll have to see when that happens. But someone actually asked the president about this today in the Oval Office as he was sitting there with the Saudi Crown Prince. A reporter from ABC News asked about the Epstein files and got some heavy blowback when the president answered. Let's watch and listen.
I think the license should be taken away from ABC because your news is so fake and it's so wrong. And we have a great commissioner, the chairman, who should look at that, because I think when you come in and when you're 97% negative to Trump and then Trump wins the election in a landslide, that means obviously your news is not credible, and you're not credible as a reporter.
Called her a terrible person, a terrible journalist, now threatening the license at ABC, which we've heard him do before. You can ask Jimmy Kimmel about this. What did you make of that reaction? What was the president thinking while he was speaking?
Well, one, Mary Bruce is an incredible reporter. I worked with her when I was at the White House. She covered the Biden administration. She's an incredible, fair journalist and was tough on President Biden as well. So it's unfortunate that Trump does this. But this is just politics. This is what he does. To have MBS in the Oval Office and for him to not think a reporter would ask about Epstein or the Khashoggi killing, it's baffling to me that they wouldn't realize that those questions were going to come up. That is what actual journalists would do. And so it's just fascinating. It's also fascinating he talks about himself in the third third person. But we have seen him call for people's licenses to be revoked before. It didn't work, just like you mentioned with Kimmel. Kimmel is also an ABC organization. Right. It didn't work. People revolted against it. ABC actually lost a lot of money doing this. So I just think that, and taking Kimmel off the air. So I just think that Trump is going to continue to call for these, but Trump is really leaning into the lame duck. He is starting to become more of a lame duck. Republicans are breaking from him on Epstein. You've seen it. People aren't following suit when he's asking for these investigations. So it will be interesting to see how this continues to play out, even leading up to the midterms, which then he will become a lame duck. But it's interesting to sort of see this shift happening under us.
It wasn't just ABC that Trump started a feud with today. Tom Homan, the border czar at the White House, also said that he would be sending ICE to New York City after Mayor-elect Zoran Mamdani said he would be reaching out to the White House for a meeting. John, where do you see this relationship between Trump and Mamdani going? Trump has said privately that he respects him, but of course politically they are couldn't be further apart.
Right, and I think both gentlemen will play to their bases a little bit, at least publicly, in trying to demonize the other. But I think that there'll be a good working relationship. I really do. I think that Mayor-elect Mamdani obviously needs to do what's right for New York City. President Trump still does have affinity for his former hometown. So I think maybe publicly they may bluster, but I think behind the scenes, as we've seen the president with other adversaries, will find a way to get things done and make sure that the city remains strong.
So we're talking with a Republican strategist and a Democratic strategist on the day that the Texas redistricting maps were knocked down. And I'm wondering if both of you think what we heard from Congressman Huizenga earlier, that we're going to end up in the same place we already were when it comes to the math. After what we've seen in Texas, now, of course, California is redrawing maps. The president's sending Truth Social posts to Indiana. Does this end up being a wash in the end after what happened today?
It'd be pretty ironic if it was a wash, but I also think we are doing something that's really terrible. We are making sure that people vote, or we are questioning where people are going to vote and making maps based on that. And we saw in the last election that the people that Trump thinks are with his base were not. So these maps might have been ineffective anyways. But I do think that this raises a lot of questions that doing this in a mid-cycle census year or mid-cycle year is just not appropriate. We shouldn't be doing this. California, I know, had a referendum to do it, and the voters voted for it in response to Texas, so it's a little bit different there. But we have a census for a reason. We redraw maps every 10 years for a reason. Doing this on a political thing because Donald Trump thinks he's going to lose the House. He is going to lose the House regardless. It is too tight of a margin.
And John, do you think we're going to end up back where we started?
It seems that way. It really does, and I think Megan makes a great point that the electorate 1 year and how people vote 2 years or 4 years later can be really remarkably different. So I think that assumptions people make about which way a district might lean in 1 year really could change. So as a political junkie, I think it's interesting to see what these districts end up looking like. But end of the day, it appears that that the redistricting wars will end up being basically fought to a draw.
Does this take some of the fire out from underneath Gavin Newsom after what he pulled off with Prop 50, if it's not needed as badly?
No, I don't think so. I think you saw it win overwhelmingly. I think that Gavin Newsom is in a moment in time here where he pushes back on Trump, and it's what Democrats need. So I don't think it takes fire away from him. I think that he will continue to do what he needs to do. It's obvious he wants to run in 28, so he's aiming for that. He's getting his name recognition out there, and he's being a fighter for the Democratic Party, which is something we have not seen a lot of in the party.
Well, we'll see if bringing it to the people has a different impact on the judges if it goes to court. Megan Hayes, John Seaton, great conversation. Thank you both for a great panel. And we invite you, as always, to check out the Washington Edition newsletter. You can find it on the terminal and online. We thank you for joining us on Balance of Power. This is Bloomberg.